system menu. Under the system menu, you have 6 different submenus. The first submenu is your date and time menu. Okay. Under your date and time, you can go ahead and choose your date by clicking on the calendar. Then you have your time that you would be able to set up right below that. You have your date format. Okay, you have 3 different formats you can choose from: day, month, year, year, month, day, or month, day, year. Then you have your 2 different time formats, 12 and 24 hours. Now, if you do have a network connection going to the ECOR, you can have the NTP update interval selected. Okay, you can choose between daily, weekly, and monthly. As long as you have your NTP server connected into the screen, okay, you can go ahead and choose your time zone, the specific time zone that you are in, and the DVR itself will automatically link up to that server and keep the date and time from the satellite time from that server. You have your daylight savings options. If you do enable or check the box, you would go ahead and put the start and the end time of your daylight savings, and then automatically the DVR would go ahead and jump ahead and jump backwards when the time comes. If the box is not checked out, you will see it's gray, and then you would manually have to change it during daylight savings time. It was in effect. Next, you have your user screen. Okay, under the user screen, this is where you would go ahead and add your username and passwords for the DVR. The username and passwords are used both for the lockout front panel of the ECOR and over the network. Okay, so the username and password is the same for both locking out the front panel of the DVR and over the network. You'll see at top you have the add user. Okay, to simply add a user, you would choose add. You would type in a name. So let's go ahead and go with Mike. Okay, you would put in a password. I'm going to use 4 number ones, 1, 2, 3, 4. Then you could choose a level. You have up to 3 different levels: operator, manager, and administrator. Okay, I'll choose administrator for, let's say I'll choose operator for him. And then you have the status. You can enable or disable the user. So we'll go ahead and enable. And then down at the bottom, you hit apply, and it tells you add user setting is successful. So once you come back up to the top of the user list, you will now see that we have 4 users: admin, Bob, EJ, and Mike. By choosing Mike again and simply going down to the action delete and choosing delete, it will tell you the set user delete is successful. And then by coming back up to the user list, you'll see Mike is no longer in there. Okay, to simply edit a user, you would click on his name. Okay, you'll see his username appears here. You have his password here. So if I wanted to go ahead and change that to, let's say, 4 ones again, I can now go ahead and adjust him from an administrator to a manager, and I can apply that, and now the savings will be changed. I can also go ahead and, by choosing Bob, I can make his status disabled for the time being. Okay, and when Bob is disabled, that means that he would no longer be able to log in until, again, his status is enabled. And again, just remember that the username and passwords are both used for logging in over the network and for the front panel of the DVR. Now you'll notice next is your security screen. Up at the top, you have your 2 options: log and protect and auto log off. If log and protect is checked and enabled, that is locking out the front panel of your DVR. So anytime you would like to get into the menu or do a playback, it's going to ask you for your password. And having auto log off enabled. Auto log off is a security feature for over the network that's saying once you log in remotely to the DVR, if there is any period of 10 minutes of inactivity, the DVR will automatically remotely log itself off the website. Okay? If that box is not checked and you log on remotely, you will stay logged on until you manually close out that window. Okay, so again, the auto log off is more used as a security feature, so if you do get up and walk away from your computer and you do not want somebody to jump on, it will automatically log off after 10 minutes of inactivity. And you'll notice down here underneath you have your select user rights. You have your 12 different options of camera, record and play, alarm and event, schedule, network, disk, display, system, playback, covert, copy, and PTZ. For the most part, the first 8 are your menu options. Okay, you have your camera menu, your record and play menu, your alarm and event menu, your schedule menu up here, your network menu, your disk menu, the display menu, and your system menu. Now, basically what that's saying is as you choose each administrative rights, I can come down here and say I only want the operator or the, let's say the manager to be able to make changes to the camera. For the schedules, I only want the operator to be able to make changes. Under the disk management, I want the administrator only. Under the network, I would like only the operator to be able to change those. So under your user right operations, you can select which user right can have control of which particular menu. Okay, along with the covert, the copy, and the PTZ, who can control the PTZ, who can access the copy menu, and who can play back covert video. Next, you have your I/O control. Okay, under your I/O control is your RS-232 port. The 232 port, as of right now, is used for RMA diagnostic testing. Okay, so that's not something that you would use. But you do have your RS-45 to your right. Under your RS-45, this is where you would go ahead and choose your PTZ protocol. You'll notice we have 5 different protocols here. You have transparent, Pelco D, Pelco P, EverFocus protocol, and the Samsung protocol. Okay, and then you have your baud rate that you can choose for the particular PTZ, 1200, 24, 48, 96 being your most common used. And then you have your 4 other options down below. And then you have your data, your stop bit, and your parity. Now you'll also notice the 485 ID. The 485 ID is not the ID of the PTZ. Remember, the ID of the PTZ is underneath that particular camera that you're setting up, PTZ ID number. The 485 ID is if you are controlling the ECOR DVR with an EKB 500. So let's say if I had 3 ECORs stacked on top of each other and I would like to control all 3 ECORs with one EKB 500, I would have to ID each ECOR under the 485 ID. I would ID ECOR number 1 as 1, 2 as 2, 3 as 3. So it knew which ECOR I was trying to pull up with the EKB 500 at that particular time. Okay, and then last, under the system menu, you have your firmware and your miscellaneous. Okay, under this menu, it's going to always tell you the latest firmware you have in the DVR at the time. Okay, right now, the most current firmware for the ECORs are firmware 1.0.9. If there was an upgrade and you would put it to a USB stick, you would pop it into the DVR, you would come to the system menu and down to firmware and miscellaneous, and you would hit the upgrade key. It would automatically start upgrading the DVR to the latest firmware. Under your configurations, you have your load factory defaults. By loading your factory defaults, that will set the machine to brand new out of the box. And then you have your load and your save to file. Your load and your save to file can be used in many different ways. One of the more common ways is if you have a chain of stores that you're going to be installing a couple different ECORs and they're all set up almost the same exact way or close to the same way, similar. You can pop, once making changes to your first ECOR, you can pop a USB stick in, save all your settings to the USB stick. Then once you get to your next location, you can pop that USB stick back in. And then you can load all the settings onto your second DVR, making any minor adjustments that you may have to make. Another way you can use these 2 options are if you do have to load the factory defaults, you can, before loading the defaults, save your settings to a USB stick, load your defaults, and then once the defaults are done, you can go ahead and load all your settings back so you do not have to reprogram the DVR manually all over again. And you'll see the remote controller ID number underneath, and you'll have 1, 2, 3, and 4. Like I said earlier in the PowerPoint presentation, each ECOR is sold with a handheld remote. So you do have the option of controlling the ECOR with the handheld remote by the mouse. By the front panel navigation keys, you can also control it and make the network the necessary changes over the network. But if you are using that handheld remote will control up to 4 ECORs. Okay, so if I do have 4 ECORs rack mounted in front of me, I would want to make sure that I specify and ID each one as 1, 2, 3, and 4. if I were not to make the changes and I left them all default at 1, okay, as I'm making changes with that remote, it's going to make changes to all 4 DVRs at once. You don't want that to happen. So if you're using that handheld remote to control more than one ECOR, make sure you come to your system menu under the firmware and miscellaneous. You change the remote controller ID to the necessary ID number. So then when you do choose that ID number on the remote, it knows which DVR to control.